Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. So this is my first video, um, and I'm mostly inspired by other people who have been making guides to Genshin Impact, especially because the game is just amazing. Um, so in this guide, I'll be going through sort of like what you can do with a default party. So if people don't want to like do any rerolls or have to go for like any specific pulls on different characters, here's one setup that sort of has been working for me personally. So you can see here in the party setup, um, I have four characters. So obviously you have your protag, um, you have Amber, who you get like fairly early on, Lisa, who you get part of the story, and then Noelle, who you get just from like the first pull that's given in the wish section. Um, so love the voice acting. So with this group, the way that I built this is so that basically the animo attributes is going to be largely support, so your protagonist support. Amber and Lisa are sort of like secondary DPS, and then I have Noelle as like a larger DPS, although Lisa, just because of the elemental attributes that mix really well between Electro and Pyro, she actually works as a really good DPS as well. So before I explain things, I'll go ahead and get started just demonstrating or showing like how you can combo these abilities together. So usually start with the ranged class, have an aim shot, combo that into swirl, have Lisa while they're knocked down, charge, and then you can go for either Noelle to finish off, you can go Amber again and shoot. There's a whole bunch of ways that you could do this. You could even pull out the Taunt Rabbit first, and that works too. And before actually, let me show again what's another way that you can do this. So you can even get him there first. These guys are normally really annoying, but if you have Noelle, she just has so much damage that they get knocked down anyways. Combo this, swirl, rinse, and repeat. And they stay knocked down like pretty consistently. Oops. Crystallize. And so you don't really give them a chance to get up off the floor with this team comp. So to go through, the artifacts are like fairly standard stuff. I think the only difference is like the stuff that I put on Noelle, but we'll get started with the Animo character. So here I just have a mix of Instructor and Sojourner. This isn't really super important. The most important thing is to get things that are like high in Elemental Mastery or in Attack for your support character. Mostly just because you won't be using him really to attack or basic attack. You'll mostly be using him for his E ability, so for that swirl. More important for Amber, I chose her to be sort of have like the exile style, just so she regens energy really quickly, so you can spam Q if you wanted to, or if you needed to. And doing that also lets the rest of your group with the 4-piece set really just keep spamming a ton of their ultimates, essentially. So this is sort of like a rough show of like what the artifacts are. And I can go more in depth into a few of them, but this isn't really like super important. Just focusing more on getting things with like high attack and elemental mastery like usual. For Lisa, it's mostly going to be instructor type stuff, so anything that increases a lot of elemental mastery. You'll notice that the artifacts don't really have elemental mastery in them because they're more focused toward attack. You could actually even change this a little bit so that you do have more elemental mastery and less attack. But because of the set bonus, you can get 80, which is pretty nice. And then especially when you're using an elemental skill, you increase all your party's elemental mastery, including Lisa's. And so that's why her charged E is like really heavy, deals really heavy damage, especially. But the artifact sets, or the artifacts specifics, aren't really super important with her. It's more with Noelle that I think that's like the most important to think about. So with Noelle, she's only really important once you get to around Liyue. So like the second region that you unlock in Genshin Impact. And it's mostly because there are a lot of geo enemies, and if you don't have any like heavy hitters, um, especially like Noelle, it makes it really difficult to kill those enemies really quickly. You have to try and like rely on Electro and Pyro, which is not super great against their like geo shields. So I prefer using Noelle for this. I have her on the martial artist set just because it has a really nice bonus attribute of like increasing normal and charge attack damage, and especially after you're using elemental skills. So here you can sort of see like the artifact. You have here like the martial artist feather, which has a high base attack that I've sort of maxed out, a decent attack percentage, which is nice, and you're always looking for things like that. Here, I just have this wine cup, which gives like tons of defense, which is really important because her E actually scales based on defense, and some of her abilities do too. But the rest of the stuff is like pretty standard. Try to find things that have attack. This is the only hourglass that I have, so I sort of have to use it even though it's HP. But if I find an attack one, then I'll switch it over. And the last thing, usually the flowers don't really matter too much because they all give HP. But this one had nice stats with attack in both of the substats, so I use this one. So one of the things to keep in mind is always the weapons. So here I have a few things. So prototype round core you can get pretty early on in the smithy, and it's pretty nice because you can get the attack and defense. But this isn't really super important because we know we're never going to use the protag. Here we have the Favionis Warbow, which is not too bad, just because it does regenerate energy, but weapons in this case don't really matter too much. Lisa's trying to find a weapon that works to scale on elemental reaction or on elemental damage is really important for Lisa. And then for Noelle, I got lucky and got 2 pulls actually of the bell, which is actually very strong on Noelle, especially since she gains 15% increased damage while she's protected by a shield. And it scales based on her max HP. And so at level 60, and I'm only what, AR 31. At level 60, she has like 15k HP. So her shield is very tanky. So that's basically it for like a default party setup. You'll notice that if we try, for example, let's do another boss. Let's do something that doesn't really have too much of an elemental disadvantage. So this party is pretty well rounded because even if you have like Pyro, then you can use Electro to defeat them. If you have a Pyro enemy, then you can use Electro to defeat them with Lisa. If you have an Electro enemy, you can use Pyro to defeat them. If they're Anemo, then you can use Lisa and Amber's combo. If they're Geo, then you can use Noelle. If they're Dendro, then obviously you can use Amber. So it's pretty well rounded. If they're even like Cryo, you can use both Amber and Lisa. So this party is pretty well rounded for like almost any sort of like elemental enemy. And you get a bunch of DPS from Noelle, who's also actually a main interestingly enough, is a support character as well for healing. So if you can get damage in that way, that works too. So we'll show it one more time, sort of the combos with this group. And especially if you don't care about like ult usage, then you can defeat them like very readily. Let's see. It's lagging a little bit. There we go. So if you really don't care about ult usage, you can do this. And then you can actually use Noelle to sort of push people into the range of that area. And then just swirl. Oh, whoops. So, got shields, but it doesn't matter. He's trying to buff enemies around. Rune Guards are fairly easy. Just make sure to properly hit their crit point. Back to back. Oh, whoops. So here you can swirl, dodge that if you can, charge, and then you can always use her E to heal. So you'll notice Lisa is actually healing on the right side, for as long as the shield is active. And then not super great because unfortunately I didn't stagger him properly, but that's okay. So you can spam her Q, you'll notice. And then Q for him. Lisa can charge up, and you can see that they take like over 1k damage, but I'm also like pretty high level for them. These characters like level 60. And there you have it. So that's basically like a rough, or my rough understanding of like a pretty decent starter party without having to do any sorts of pulls. So that's basically it. Hope you have a good day. Take care, everyone. And as always, stay safe.